Greeks we want. These Greeks like him. Yes, this is the Greeks we should be proud of. He's a role model.
Thank you.
Welcome to the 9th role model for a cause, and today we have with us Stathis Anagnostou. He is a dear friend of mine. He has been one of the most excellent young professionals of the World Bank, at least in my opinion. And now he's off to some new adventures that he's going to actually reveal to all of us by the end of this video. Stathis, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's very nice to be here.
And of course, it's very nice that you're finally in Athens.
I am in Athens, indeed.
How many years now in Washington, D.C.?
I mean, I have only been 3 years in Washington, D.C., or 3.5, and lately, but since the beginning, or since the time I graduated from school, I've probably been now almost 18 years abroad. So that's
right. So this is our first question that we have for you. When did you leave Greece, and why did you decide to stay abroad?
I mean, they told me I'm number 9th interview, so maybe I should just say that I left when I was 9 years old, which is apparently not the case. I left Greece when I was 18 just to go abroad and study. But at the time I was feeling, I wasn't really sure whether I'm coming back at some point or not. As Greeks, we have a dear friendship to our place, and also we really want the country to do better. So it's always kind of a connection of things. I believe at the time I wanted to explore the opportunities that a foreign country had to offer. After the first foreign country, unfortunately or fortunately, 10 more happened along the way. So I've been living in almost 10, 11 countries by now. But then again, the last adventure, which we discuss along the way, only happened just because, on top of other reasons, obviously, but I want to spend some more time in Greece and hopefully help Greece even more.
How many countries have you visited, and which one is the most dear to you after Greece?
Visited, it's a good question. Thankfully, I probably have a good answer, or close to a good answer. I visited already probably 60 countries by now. I lived in 11, in Africa, Asia. I lived in 11.
Which ones?
I grew up obviously in Greece, then I moved to the UK to study, and that was a reason, coming back to the first question, studies was the first reason why I went abroad. I lived in France, number 3, the US. That's a different question, so we have to keep with the 11 countries now, right? Okay, I'll come back to the subject, but let's actually number all the countries. Then I lived in the US. At some point before that, I was living in Singapore, South Korea, Chad, which was not really living. I was going in and out, but fairly extensively. The Scandinavia, I spent a long summer between Norway and Finland. And then lately, I've been spending a significant time in Nigeria.
All right.
We are in 9. I'm probably 10th. A small stint in Germany.
All right.
I don't know what you count living or not. I was there for a few months.
Well, Germany is not that exotic. So
okay, there you go. Let's stick to 10 because it sounds like a rounded number.
So, okay, you have to tell me about France and about Nigeria.
Sure.
And Chad,
who goes to Chad? Some people do.
Have you visited all these countries due to your position in the World Bank?
No, most of the countries apparently happened before the World Bank.
Right.
So, I've visited some countries through the World Bank, Saudi Arabia being one of them, which is not really a country that you go to every day and you need a particular purpose, if it's not at least religious, to go there. But then again, I believe that I was just trying to travel in different areas and different continents and countries. Most of them were coming through the work I was doing at the time. Coming back to your, combination of questions, France was for a job that I was offered after I graduated or after working a little bit in England. And then I had something to go to France. I was thinking excelling or at least improving my French was a good idea at the time. I was working close to shipping or at least in a shipyard. I thought that's not such a bad stint after London or after the UK to be into a real perspective. And then you said you actually asked me about Nigeria. Well, Nigeria just happened since the group I'm working with now in the United States is having a lot of investments in Africa and mostly in Nigeria.
So Nigeria is the new adventure.
It's kind of the new adventure, yes.
Don't go there.
There you go. You try to ruin that.
I'm not letting you go there, Jesse. I'm sorry. So I have another question that came from our audience. They ask us, how did you end up getting into the World Bank at the first place? Like, was it something that you have planned? Was it a dream of yours since your, I don't know, high school or, I don't know, like study years? Or it just happened along the way?
I mean, probably your audience would like to hear that, it was like my teenage dream or I want to go to the World Bank. Not necessarily, but then again, after having been at the World Bank, I could say that could potentially be a dream. And another common questions I'm getting a lot, is it through your connections? Again, maybe I would love to say yes, it was, but apparently it wasn't. So I had to go through a normal process. I was looking for different continents and different countries, mostly in the private sector, but I was actually applying to some jobs in international organizations. Through my business school, there was an application about a particular job at the World Bank, which was related to economics. But then through that, I found about the Young Professional Program, or at least the Young Professional Program in Finance, which was really what I ended up going to. And then, so I had to apply. It was a fairly extensive list of people applying, obviously, from all over the world. I was thinking maybe you are never getting that job, but what do you have to lose? And then potentially, or probably it was the hardest interview you went with too, since it happened over 2 full days of, kind of a career center at the time at the World Bank, or at least an examination center, that you had a number of interviews. So
in Washington, this happened
in Washington, DC. Well, I mean, there was a first round, but at the end of the day, we were invited in Washington, and I don't know, like a very small percentage of people. I mean, eventually they got only a very small percentage of people. I just think I was lucky, or maybe at the time, because Greece was not doing very well, they were feeling pity of me, and they said, let's take this poor Greek at the World Bank.
This I don't believe. I can believe anything you will tell me, but this I don't believe. I think you were more qualified, more than enough.
I'm not sure. Well, again, I started in finance. Greeks was actually teaching the world at the time how finance is done. So maybe they wanted to hear that from an actual perspective or a reality perspective. Yes.
And another question that we got was it tough?
Which country?
Oh, right. This is
please finish your question.
The question is that was it tough? Were the working hours a lot? And how was your schedule? Like, to say it, in a common language, did you have a life while working in the World Bank?
Well, no matter what I do, I always try to have a life. I mean, this is important for maybe the people that will view that video. This is important for me. I mean, if life is not combined with your work, then you are either not in the right space or you are probably not doing what you should be doing. I think a combination and a good balance of all your aspects of your life is very important. Mm-hmm. So the World Bank was really a lot of work, especially after my first 2 years when I started working for the president of the World Bank. So, at some points you don't have necessarily a time schedule. You have to wake up in the middle of the night just to write a report or a memo. Your director is actually sending you things. And again, the presidential team, just to put things into perspective, is a fairly small team of only 15, 20 people, and mostly probably 5 to 8 people being on the executive side.
So you have all the burden on you. You mean like you have to do everything?
Not all, but you need a lot of coordination, and you need to be on alert when you need to be on alert, which is basically the whole time, because as you know better, crises do not stop.
And they're also asking us, what was your first position? How easy was it to change positions inside the World Bank? And is it similar to a corporate ladder? I mean, do you get in higher and higher positions? And is there like a way to do it inside such a big organization like the World Bank?
Well, I mean, there was a young professional program. Again, young professionals at the World Bank are not really like that young. So you sometimes have to be slightly experienced in order to make sure that you make it. But I think I went out of my ways to make sure at least try to get to the president's office. I think it was a combination of skills and luck and, meeting the right people internally and actually pitching for yourself. So it was not a path that everyone does. I think it was a great experience for me rather than being in another position because that suited my personality and my needs and my willingness to help on a very high level, not only the World Bank, but actually the world. Maybe you are just studying a small pillar of what the president, the team does, but sometimes it's very important and it can change, the life of millions of people. So this is something that I'm proud of, or at least the team is proud of. Then again, corporate ladder, not necessarily. Most people enter as economists and they have an economist ladder or an economist path. Other people that are coming all around from, engineering, finance, etc., which is mostly my case, doesn't necessarily have a particular path. Right. It can be fairly clear, but, as any other job or career, you have to justify your path and you have to make your path.
So what is one advice that you could give to someone that would like to work in such an organization like the World Bank? Or even the World Bank per se? Like, what is the advice you would give them first when they try to apply? And second, if they make it inside, what should they watch out for? What should they look for?
Yeah.
Like, what is the right way to go?
Right. I mean, I think, first of all, you don't necessarily want to start your career at the World Bank. If you have that opportunity, that's great, but I think you can gain way more and you can give way more to the World Bank if you go at a slightly later stage. I mean, you need some experience, whether it's public sector experience, private sector, non-governmental, but I think it's very important that you get some experience before going to the World Bank, because the jump you will make and the opportunity of actually giving back is way more beneficial rather than not. Then again, how you apply, I mean, it's a tough way, it's a tough path. You need a little bit of luck. Unfortunately or fortunately, there are some quotas too. So depending on which country you come from, maybe you have more opportunities rather than others, depending on how many people of these countries are working at the World Bank. So the path is not very straight or clear, but since I was heading the youth organization or the young professionals at the World Bank at some point, I believe that we tried a lot to make sure that people have a path. Even when they come through an internship, the path is not lost. I'm not sure whether we have fully succeeded or not, but I believe that at least we were trying our best and things have changed slowly but surely.
What was your favorite position in the World Bank or your favorite project?
My favorite team actually at the World Bank, I believe, as I was trying to put things into a different perspective, there were two completely different sessions, areas, or teams. One was the corporate finance, and it was financing for the World Bank, that you could see a lot of different aspects of how a global organization is working internally, and then the president's office or the presidential team is something completely different. You had to deal with areas that you were not an expert, you didn't necessarily know. It had to combine a lot of finance and financial analysis and understanding. But then again, we start discussing or we start doing things around climate change or immigration. That, I think, was the first time we start speaking extensively to each other. When we're discussing about immigration, and then the bank at the time was trying to help Greece come into a model or a role play, or at least try to do as much as possible for the Greek community. Favorite now project, I think it wouldn't be fair for me to kind of put a particular project as a favorite, because some people may be offended or not. I think if we keep things in a global level, I believe immigration was a very interesting piece for me as a Greek. But then again, things like climate change and infrastructure finance, which is really how do you make the world a better place, especially through infrastructure, was very important. So you have really to, and what I'm saying, climate change is more of a public concern. infrastructure is more of a public-private concern. How do you kind of blend the two areas together or the two aspects together, and you make things, or you make the world a better place? I believe as we, and you are about to ask something, but I believe moving forward, the public with the private financing is coming closer together. So this will be the future in our lives.
This is exactly my question. How do you blend the public and the private sector? What is this fine line that you can actually achieve an equal partnership or a fair partnership? And where does the state or the society lies inside this partnership? Like, how can you achieve something like that?
It's a very thin line, as you say. I believe in the past the governments were fully funded, so more funds were coming from the public sector. Obviously, the private sector was there, but in many cases was not so interested in public infrastructure, at least, or public projects. Now I think the public sector is still there because of the politics and the importance of making things the way they are or making things done. But at the same time, you need the private financing, whether it comes from the bank or from private investors or from entrepreneurs. I mean, as we move forward, I believe this blend of the two worlds is coming a little bit closer to each other. So I think one without the other in the future will not be as beneficial to people as when the two sectors come together. And they are not really sectors, really. They are just different entities or areas.
Mm-hmm. How did you decide to do the change from, let's say, the public sector, if I can say that for the World Bank, into the private sector? And like, not only how did you do the jump, but what is this new job that you're...
What is the new job after all? Well, first of all, I was in the private sector before going to the World Bank. So I thought that at the time it was a great jump to go into an international organization and learn the other side of the chess or the other side of the mountain. But I was working with Samsung before and some other private sector companies, whether it was in shipping or engineering or financing, etc. So now, after some years at the World Bank, you feel that you are doing a lot, but in some cases things are not as fast as in the private sector. So I was missing that, kind of day-to-day deal-making thrill, adventure, if you may say. Obviously, you have different adventures at the more global international organization, but sometimes you cannot be, even if you want to, I'm not saying we don't want to, but even if you want to, sometimes you have to see things from a different sphere, and you have to make sure that the governments are on the same page. Mm-hmm. And the governments, because of different eras or different interests, are not always acting as fast as the world need them to be.
That's true.
Without that being a criticism, but that's the way it is.
So still,
my new adventure, yes, I'm coming to that. So lately I'm working at a shipping company, or at least a shipping investment fund company. And part of what I do on the side or through that group is actually advising a milling or an agro-allied company in Nigeria, that being one of the biggest food and agro-allied companies in Nigeria, the biggest actually, and probably one of the biggest groups in Africa. So I have really tried to bring together through the work private financing with actually creativity, and obviously on the other perspective, I mean, you are putting funds into, yes, for profit. It's not a non-profit organization, at that particular moment, or at least it will probably never be. But I think it's important because, yes, you are actually caring about a day-to-day running of a business and eventually some profit too in order to pay your expenses and the people that they work for the team or the company. But at the end of the day, you are providing good. You are feeding Nigeria. You are feeding the nation. You want to expand and potentially feed other countries around Africa. I think will be, food will be, it is, but it will also be a huge area in the future. And a lot of local content is not always there. So a lot of importation in these countries happen without necessarily being the best case scenario. I mean, obviously, importation from different countries will always be the case no matter what, but you need to grow the local content and you need to grow the local community, providing more jobs, financing, exactly, empowering people that feel that they have a lot to offer. And there are some super smart people in all those countries that you can really benefit from, and we learn from each other daily, which is a good, I mean, yes, you are in the private sector, and some people say that the private sector is the bad sector, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, it's a blend, and if you are working for a good cause, it's always easier.
You know that I have done a lot of things for civil society in Greece.
I do.
And in the other countries that I have been, like the Netherlands and Belgium. So I would like you to promise here live with everybody, so that you are accountable, that you will take me with you to your next trip to Nigeria.
I mean, that's a big promise. Nigeria is not necessarily the best place for, for girls, let's say, because there's a lot of security issues. But at some point, we may try to work that out.
Okay, now that
you are not as excited as before. You were expecting me to say, yes, let's go to Nigeria. I mean, we will go to Nigeria, but we have a calculated risk to account for.
Do you plan to move back to Greece? Like, is it in your...
Well, I mean, it's always in your thoughts. I was very close of coming back last year, but, fortunately or unfortunately, that didn't happen. Or it was a decision to be made at the time, and I didn't go for it. But then again, we always want, or at least I always want to help Greece in the future, be, even if not living in Greece fully, at least being in the forefront of things happening. And who knows, maybe in the future, as many people say, the international community is a very important one as globalization is expanding, and maybe having key connections or key contacts in different countries will be as beneficial as if you were in Greece only.
What do you miss from the World Bank, and what do you like the most in your new job?
The World Bank, obviously, the team and the people. I mean, I really miss the people. I had some very good friends. I still have some very good friends, but we are not in such a close contact in our everyday lives. And I miss a lot of the good that was happening outside the World Bank. I mean, Washington is a very vibrant city. New York is a very vibrant city, obviously, too. But then again, the community was trying to help in many different levels, since most of the people are around politics or international organizations. Some of them are even in lobbying, but everyone comes together for a good cause and a similar cause. The new job. The new job is obviously, from the other point of view, very exciting. And then you combine, I mean, you really enjoy the people you work with. It's more people, mostly from the private sector, and you have to learn a lot. And at the end of the day, you are combining, yes, the United States, Greece in some cases, and Africa. So for me, that is very important.
Before you go, one last question. What were you doing in Chad? like, please. Okay. How on earth a Greek ends up in Chad, randomly, hello, ciao, loves, I'm here? Well,
obviously, I mean, it didn't happen overnight. We tried to do some planning. At the time, I was working with a joint venture or with a consortium trying to invest in Chad through private money mostly, but we would collaborate with the government, again, I believe, for a good cause. So we're trying to build or finance a project that social housing would be built for people, and also the electricity grid would be improved. I believe that it was a great experience. It was a great project. Unfortunately, it was not fulfilled or it was not finalized just because the Central African Republic had a coup, and then the person or the president of Chad had to send reinforcements in the neighboring country just for the situation not to expand at a warfare level and at the political level too. So that was the end of it, but I spent a very interesting year in and out Chad.
So I know I promised this to be the last question,
but you had a follow-up question. That's fine.
It's kind of a follow-up. Optimistic or pessimistic about the Greek reality right now?
I mean, fully optimistic. You always have to be optimistic no matter what. I believe that our generation or the people even, following us will be here in the forefront for a number of years, and you really need to be optimistic about the situation of the country, but then again, how each and every one of us can add some value to exit that crisis or that prolonged crisis all along. I mean, yes, the markets yesterday was a win. or at least it was a positive era after a while. But then again, we have to continue, and I believe that in some years we will have to play. Me and you have to play a big role in making sure that is prolonged.
My friend, that's a deal.
That's a deal.
I'm here to stay. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
Excellent. That's good to hear. We always have a pillar
here. You
here.
promise over there that, guys, he's going to be available. Any more questions that you might have that we haven't answered because you've sent us a lot again, he's going to be online.
Please feel free to shoot anything you need.
I'm going to provide you with his Facebook account. Maybe his email, we will see. Yes, it depends on where we will land with the Nigeria thing. Stathis, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And we will definitely see each other.
We will definitely see each other, and feel free.
Captain, my captain.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we will plan the African trip, but then again, feel free to ask anything you need as a follow-up questions, either through Ioanna or through my personal details.
These are the Greeks we want. These Greeks like him. Yes. This is the Greeks we should be proud of. He's a role model.
Thank you. We should be proud for her too.